Hello everyone, I am Demented Kirby. Welcome to my channel, The Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Brewery is a series on this channel showcasing my spicy brews and other deck techs. On this episode of The Brewery, I'll be discussing my very own in real life build for the partnering of Ikra Shidiqi the Usurper and Bruse Tarl Brewer's Herder. If you like this deck or any of the cards I'll be mentioning throughout the video, please consider using my TCG Player affiliate link when purchasing those cards. You can find that link down in the description. It'll really help out the channel at no extra cost to you. But the very best way you can help support the channel is with my Patreon. There are plenty of perks for being a patron, such as early access to certain videos, exclusive deck techs, gifts, and more for as little as $1. You could also become a channel member for just 99 cents. Show off your support with the logo next to your name and exclusive emojis. Or you can always just support my channel for free by simply liking, subscribing, and sharing, which also helps out a lot. I try and put out a video every Monday, so you don't want to miss out. You can join my Discord server for free if you want to join the Commander Tavern community. All pertinent links are down in the description. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Ikra Shidiqi is a 3/7 snake wizard with menace for 3 generic, 1 black and 1 green. Whenever a creature you control hits a player, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. This one is the key partner of the deck. That's because this is an Enrage deck where I'll be constantly pinging my creatures. However, the best global ping effects also tend to hit players too, so being able to gain life is very helpful to our strategy, enabling us to also potentially stay ahead in life. Since this life gain is connected to combat damage, Bruse Tarl is a great partner. A 3/3 human ally for 2 generic, 1 red and 1 white. Whenever he enters or attacks, a creature we control gains double strike until end of turn. If we do this to our bigger creature, we can deal significant damage to an opponent. Or better yet, to a creature with high toughness to gain double that life if we controlled Ikra Shidiqi. And it's even better if Ikra due to the 7 toughness. I've been wanting to build an Enrage deck for the longest time but wasn't ever able to find the adequate commander for it. Sure, there are some good commanders in red, green, and white colors, but the best global damage dealing effects are in black. Throughout a lot of the experiments and playtesting, I found this partner combination to be the best fit, for me at least. So let's start off with my favorite Enrage creatures, Barbed Servitor, Brash Taunter, and Stuffy Doll. These being indestructible is a huge bonus. While we can't block with the Servitor due to it entering suspected, opponents tend to not swing into you when you control the doll or the goblin. Granted, since the doll only affects a single opponent, that can also help against a potential arch enemy or somebody else if a different opponent swung into you. In any case, with so many non-combat damage dealing effects in the deck, opponents will get hit from their triggers regardless if they're used as blockers or not. That being said, the goblin is especially brutal since you can essentially fight the biggest creature on the board with it, and really do some damage. Screaming Nemesis, Ill-Tempered Loner, Phyrexian Vindicator, and Wrathful Raptors are next in line but only slightly lower on the rung, but only because they aren't indestructible. These have a similar trigger as the previous 3 but also have their uniqueness to them. The Nemesis gives a pseudo emblem to an opponent where they can't gain life for the rest of the game. The Werewolf has a fire breathing ability which goes great with Bruce's double strike trigger in the late game. However, it can also transform, giving it an even better effect since now it'll trigger whenever any permanent we control is dealt damage. Granted, it's when it's nightbound, but that isn't an issue. Oh, and it also keeps its fire breathing ability. The Vindicator doesn't have indestructible, but it does prevent the damage being dealt to it, which is great. It's also a 5/5 flyer with the only drawback being the quadruple white casting cost. While that might be a hindrance in a 4-color deck like this one, the deck has plenty of ways to secure our mana fixing. The Raptors have a similar effect to Howlpack Avenger, but only for dinosaurs. While the deck doesn't have many dinosaurs in it, it's not a negligible amount. Plus, it also counts itself, which is what really matters here. Blazing Sunsteel, Fiend Lash, and Paid for All grant this type of Voodoo Doll effect to whatever creature it's attached to. The Sunsteel gives a nice power boost to the equipped creature too. Fiend Lash giving reach is incredibly useful, especially when equipped to a big bottom creature like Ikra Shidiqi. The Aura's only drawback is losing it when we lose the creature is enchanting, but it does have a nice ETB trigger that has the creature deal damage equal to its power to any other target. The rest of the Enrage triggers in the deck provide other uses besides closing out games via non-combat damage. Hornet Nest, Spore Weeper, Bondress, Rage of the Ancients, and Polyraptor all create tokens when deal damage. The Nest won't hold out much if dealt a lot of damage, but incrementally getting 1/1 Death Touch flyers is an amazing attack deterrent. Bondress creates massive tokens in the form of 5/4 dragons that get sacrificed whenever they deal damage, but that's fine. We're still getting 5/4 creatures from the trigger. There's no way in this deck to trigger its die rolling effect, but that's fine. Polyraptor is perhaps the best of these though because it essentially grows exponentially. A whopping 8 mana to cast, this will at least close out games once you get it and have a ping effect in play. Last but not least is a Spider. It also has the added bonus of gaining its life when it's pinged. If our global ping effect is just 1 damage to everyone and everything, this will at least neutralize that life loss each time it's hit, while also giving us the 1/1 token for our troubles. Exquisite Blood is also included for that very reason. Keep in mind that we want to also be gaining life with this deck because we're almost always hitting everyone and everything with our ping effects. so gaining life whenever opponents lose life is really helpful to keep us ahead. However, I do not include the insta-win combo with Exquisite Blood in this deck, so I make it a point to clarify that whenever I cast it. It's here solely because it's massively useful and synergistic with the deck all on its own. That being said, if you did want to run Sanguine Bond with Exquisite Blood, go for it. Going back to Enrage triggers, Rite of Passage and Bellowing Aegisar are some more important ones. If the creature getting damaged survives that damage, it'll get a +1/+1 counter placed on it, allowing it to survive taking further damage. The dinosaur doesn't pump itself, but with 5 toughness, it'll survive plenty of 1 damage pings throughout a single turn. Cacophodon is the last super important one, and this ties into the ping effects themselves. Whenever it gets dealt damage, we can untap a permanent. This means that if the ping effect is from tapping a permanent down, we untap it and can then use it to ping again. Or if the ping effect only costs a single mana to activate, we can untap the land used to pay for it. But we'll see all of those ping effects soon. Just keep in mind that Cacophodon is very powerful in this deck. Ripjaw Raptor is amazing in its own right because we draw a card whenever it's dealt damage. Nothing too fancy, but this will draw us a ton of cards once we have a nice engine going. Its Alto Fire Giant Duke is perhaps my favorite Enrage deck in the entire deck, but that's because of how much I love the dungeon mechanic. We can essentially speedrun any of the original 3 dungeons with this thing, assuming we don't go too hardcore because it does have only 3 toughness. That being said, 7 power with trample is nothing to scoff at. Last but not least is Silverclad Ferocidons. While this is definitely on the higher end of the curve in the deck at 7 mana, once we have it in play with a reliable ping effect, opponents will be losing most of their board if this isn't dealt with. Granted, in the late game, people will have massive boards, but being able to whittle it down 1 ping at a time, hopefully multiple times in a turn, throughout an entire round around the table, will hopefully leave your opponents vulnerable for a game-ending Alpha Strike. Alright, now that we saw what triggers when getting pinged, it follows that we should go over what will do the actual pinging. To that end, the deck is running cards like Sorrow's Path and Noxious Field. The land enchanted by this aura becomes an amazing ping effect, dealing 1 damage to everyone and everything just by tapping it down. Granted, you won't get mana from it, but that's fine. Now imagine you have Cacophodon in play, remember? You can then untap that land and continue pinging until just before killing the Cacophodon. Then, during the cleanup step, the damage is removed and you can continue this during the next player's turn. Amazing. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about Sorrow's Path. If you've been following this channel for a while now, then you should know that I love my spicy, obscure, and weird tech. Considered one of the worst cards ever printed, this land is actually incredibly amazing in this deck, because whenever it's tapped down, it deals 2 damage to us and all of our creatures, providing an amazing source of pinging. Sure, the activation requirements might seem weird, but this doesn't have to be during our own combat phase. It's only about opponents blocking creatures. However, we can guarantee being able to tap it down if it's for mana. It doesn't have any built-in mana adding effect, so that's where Urborg to move Yawgmoth and Yavimaya Cradle of Growth come in. If we tap it down for either black or green mana, we still get the 2 damage to us and all of our creatures trigger to happen. This might seem super convoluted, but I really like this card and I especially love it in this deck. So much so that Urza's Cave, Expedition Map, and Sylvan's Scrying are included to help find any of those 3 lands depending on which one we'd need. While neither of these are straight up mana accelerants, at least we can guarantee that land drop for whichever land we choose. However, the best ones are Hour of Promise and Titania's Command. Both of these are capable of finding both Sorrow's Path and any of the color fixing lands, which, apart from making Sorrow's Path better, also help us with color fixing. Yes, the cost of these sorceries is quite steep, but at least these are mana accelerating spells. Don't worry, I'm still running Soul Ring, Farseek, Nature's Lore, 3 Visits, and Rampant Growth. There's still actually early game mana acceleration in the deck. But the point is that, as niche as it is to want to shoehorn Sorrow's Path in this deck, the ways to get it in play will still work even if used for something else, so they are not dead cards. Anyways, going back to the rest of the pinging effects, Subterranean Spirit is another amazing card that goes great with Cacophodon, and on its own too. The protection from red is basically to protect itself from its own ability. However, it's still a huge bonus because it also protects it from the rest of the red damage sources in the deck. Or, if facing against opponents with red creatures, it's an amazing blocker. Pestilence and Pyrohemia are more of those global pinging effects, but possibly the best ones because they don't tap to ping. You just have to pay that soul black or red mana respectively. They also pair amazingly with Cacophodon because whenever land you tapped down to pay for the ability can then be untapped with it in order to activate them again. Just be careful when also using these enchantments to clear the board because if there aren't any creatures in play at the beginning of the next upkeep, we have to sacrifice them. An important thing to know about these enchantments is that they can also be used to close out the game if we have more life than our other opponents, especially if we control Exquisite Blood when we're activating them, so keep that in mind. Maha, its Feathers Knight, is included to make the most of those global 1 damage to everything abilities. If all of our opponent's creatures have a base toughness of 1, then any creature without a toughness pump effect is going to die by a single activation of Subterranean Spirit, Pestilence, Pyrohemia, etc., essentially wiping the board. On top of that, it has Flying, Trample, and Ward, plus it's a 6/5, all for 5 mana. The power creep might be real, but this card is absolutely amazing here. Speaking of newer cards power creeping out older cards, Splintering Wind, another old and obscure card also considered to be a very bad card, is actually pretty amazing in this deck. Just like Sorrow's Path, I am never cutting this card from the deck. It costs the same to cast as the previous 2 picking enchantments, but it costs thrice as much to activate. And even then, it only deals 1 damage to 1 single creature. However, you do get a 1/1 creature token from it. But best of all, whenever that token leaves play, it pings us and all of our creatures for 1 damage. We don't even need to worry about how to get it to leave because it has a built-in cumulative upkeep. Just don't pay it and it'll get sacrificed, leaving the battlefield and giving us the trigger. Yes, it's long-winded, but I find this card to be super fun in here. Plus, it always turns heads when I play it, and you all know I love playing cards that do that. Dawnsire's Sunstar Dreadnought is absolutely insane when stationed to at least 10 charge counters. Whenever we attack, we deal 100 damage to any creature or planeswalker. Imagine attacking while this is active and controlling something like Brash Taunter or Phyrexian Vindicator. You can provide your opponent with a most glorious death. Last but not least is Weda, Trainer Prodigy. The way Weda triggers Enrage is by having our creatures fight other creatures with her activated ability. However, if we have our own creatures fight, then it only costs a single green mana and tapping to activate. That being said, if an opponent has a massive creature, just have that fight with any of our Enraged creatures that will benefit from the massive damage. Or maybe one of our Death Touch tokens. In any case, Weda further useful with her replacement effect. Whenever any of our Enraged abilities trigger, it'll trigger an additional time. Double the Polyraptor triggers, double the Barb Servitor triggers, double the Zalto triggers. You get the point. Amazing card here. If she'd also been black, she would have been in the commander for this deck 100%. But I couldn't miss out on all the amazing black cards, of which we'll see some more soon. Redirecting damage is another amazing way to ping our creatures, especially when we do it as a surprise against our opponents. Cards like Gideon's Sacrifice, Saving Grace, Simulacrum, and Martyrdom are absolutely busted when timed correctly. If you were to ever get Alpha Striked by the Horde player, you can cast these in response to the combat damage step and then have all of that damage redirected to an enraged creature, hopefully something like Brash Taunter or Barbed Servitor. A lot of times, opponents don't see these spells coming because they're cheap instants and nobody plays them, especially the last 2, which are incredibly old and obscure cards. Same with Blaze of Glory, yet another amazing card that is also old and obscure. When was the last time you ever saw someone play this card? Or Simulacrum, Martyrdom, Splintering Wind, or Sorrow's Path? In any case, this combat trick is played like the aforementioned for instance. However, the timing is slightly different. You play this during combat but before the blocker step. In other words, the best window to cast this is after attackers are chosen. You choose your best enraged creature and target it with this spell, allowing it to block all creatures it's able to, receiving a ton of damage that would have otherwise gone to your face. And yes, of course, any of the creatures that dealt that damage to opponents are the best targets for this. But don't sleep on creatures like Hornet's Nest either. General's Regalia and Pariah's Shield also do something similar to the first 4 instants, but these are obviously telegraphed because they're permanents attached to creatures. Watch opponents sweat and scramble for what to do when either of these are equipped to something like Hornet's Nest, Brash Taunter, etc. Burrow's Charm, Grand Crescendo, Heroic Intervention, and Flawless Maneuver help make our creatures indestructible. Obviously, these are amazing responses to opposing board wipes, but if we wanted to protect any of our creatures, if we really needed to up the global damage dealt, these will get the damage done, especially in response to something like Blasphemous Act on the stack, preferably when we're the ones casting it. Obviously, this is also an amazing Enrage enabler in the deck. However, unless those creatures are indestructible, they're going to die, so use only in emergencies only, or if you can end the game with your Brash Taunter type creatures. Apart from all the amazing black cards previously mentioned, having access to black also gives us access to amazing card draw effects since the deck is mono-blue. Black Market Connections and Phyrexian Arena trigger at the beginning of our upkeep, giving us that extra card at the cost of life. But since the deck has plenty of ways of gaining life, one of them's right there in the command zone, we don't have to worry too much about it. The first one can also accelerate our mana if we create a treasure too. Necropotence and Greed are also in here. Yes, the triple black casting cost from Necropotence might seem like a hindrance, but the deck doesn't have any color fixing issues between the cards that can get Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, the ramp spells that can get dual typed and triple typed lands, plus running all 10 fetch lands that can do the same. So we're fine, especially enough to run the best card advantage card available to us. Greed can be activated when needed, and we should be fine in life to do so as often as needed too. Reliquary Tower is included because of how amazing it goes with Necropotence. That way you never have to worry about not drawing too many cards with it due to the discard step. Pay as much life as you can to draw as many cards as you want. It also goes great in the deck anyways, being one of only 2 lands that don't tap for color without Urborg or Yamavaya. No, I don't count Sorrow's Path as a land slot in the deck. It doesn't tap for mana. The other colorless land is Ancient Tomb, which is great in the early game and we can eventually mitigate the Life Sloth Summit. Bonus points if you hurt yourself with this while having an Enrage creature equipped with Pariah's Shield. The One Ring might be a controversial include for some, especially considering its secondary market price, but I got this one with the Lord of the Rings bundle when it came out and it needed a home. This deck is a great home for it since we can buffer the life loss thanks to Ikra Shidiqi, Exquisite Blood, etc. Drawing all those cards not only keeps us with finding what we need, but also ensuring we have some form of universal interaction in our hand. The deck is running Assassin's Trophy, Beast Within, Chaos Warp, Generous Gift, and Stroke of Midnight for single target removal, and Guff Rewrites History and Unexplained Absence for multiple single target removal. The downside to 4-colored decks like this one tends to be color fixing, which we can pretty much solve. But the upside is having access to amazing removal, which deck does without issue. Granted, it also doesn't need a lot of interaction since constantly and consistently pinging the entire board tends to help remove creatures en masse. The rest of the deck is just the rest of the lands. Of those not already mentioned, the deck's running all 3 Shock lands, all 4 Tricycle lands, City of Brass, Mana Confluence, Starting Town, Exotic Orchard, Reflecting Pool, and Command Tower, as well as 1 of each basic land for the pertinent land-based mana acceleration effects, and to ensure Blood Moon type effects. As with all of my deck techs, you can build your mana base according to your budget. Whether you include more expensive cards or even cheaper cards is up to you. You do you. Similarly, if you want to change the bracket for your own build, go for it. This brew is just an idea of how to build around Ikra Shidiqi with Bruse Tarl as its partner. There is no singular way to build a deck around damaging your own creatures for value, but I absolutely love this deck. Not to toot my own horn, but it's one of my favorite decks. What I love most about it is that it's an amazing home for so many cards that people sleep on, let alone are even aware exist. My favorite thing about this game is building decks with weird and obscure cards, because that way I can share the fun and knowledge with my opponents as well. I hate seeing the same cards time and time again in Commander games. Every time I see Ristic Study, I immediately groan. But I digress. So far, I've made a video out of every deck I've had in real life, with this being the only one I had left to make. So if you're interested in the deck list of this spicy brew of mine, you can find a link to it down in the description. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the Brewers, for their patronage. I'd also like to thank anyone using my TCG Player affiliate link. That also helps out the channel. I also want to thank any channel members. Your membership is greatly appreciated. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of The Brewery on the Commander Tavern. I am the Bennett Kirby, and happy brewing.